Our speaker today is Ms. Rita Rufus, completed her bachelor's degree in occupational therapy from SRM University in India in 2018. She received a US certification in sensory integration modules conducted by Collaborative for Leadership in Iris Sensory Integration, which is approved by the American Occupational Therapy Association. She is a member of All India Occupational Therapies. Prior to joining TDCC, she worked in pediatric centers in India, and across the UAE. With 5 years extensive experience and expertise, ladies and gentlemen, may I present to you our speaker for today, Ms. Risa Rufus. Risa, the floor is yours.
I hope it's visible to everyone. Yeah.
Yes, we can see it now. Thank you.
Yeah. So in today's webinar, you will be learning about the senses of our body, what sensory processing disorder is, and how sensory integration is linked to sensory diet. And there has been recent webinars on what sensory processing disorder and sensory integration is at TDCC recently, conducted by my colleagues. And for those of you who have joined newly, let's go through once more about what sensory processing disorder and sensory integration are. So as all of us know, we have some basic senses in our body, right? So we know about the visual sense, which is responsible for sight, auditory sense, which is responsible for hearing, tactile, that's the touch sensation. This is the largest sensation in our body. And olfactory sense, that's the sense of smell. And for gustatory, that's the sense of taste. So apart from these, we occupational therapists always talk about some other senses which play a major role in the development of children and in the human development. That's the vestibular sense. This is a sense that's located in the inner ear, and this is a sense of movement, and this is responsible for balance and coordination. Next is we have the proprioceptive sense. This is the sensation of the joints, and this helps with body awareness and body position. And we have the interoception sense, which is the senses perceived from the internal organs of our body. For example, you feel thirsty, you feel nauseous, you feel like it's hot and cold. All these are the sensory signals received from the interoception sense. When all these sensory signals received from the various senses are not being able to organize, that's when the sensory processing disorder happens. So this is a condition that exists when sensory signals do not get organized and show appropriate response. So when the flow of sensations becomes jammed or disorganized, the brain can experience stress, resulting in difficulties that may affect child's emotions, motor skills, academic skills, and social skills, due to which it becomes hard to cope up with the demands of day-to-day life. For example, imagine a traffic police. In the UAE, we do not have a traffic police, but in many other countries, we do. So imagine what happens if the traffic police is going to lose control over giving signals. What's going to happen to that situation? That's what happens when the flow of sensations down. In other words, sensory processing disorder also means that when there is a difficulty in filtering and showing a very good response with relation to what's happening to the environment, that's when the sensory processing disorder is happening. And this gives the children muddled and confused information of not knowing how to process and respond. And in children with sensory processing disorder, we may see a child who is overly excited, a child who enjoys constant running, who has difficulties with changes in routine, that's transition, who can't sit still and constantly fidgets, a child who has difficulties in following instruction and paying attention, who puts hands over ears to avoid sounds, that's auditory sensitivity, and who may avoid climbing, moving, swinging, and sliding. And they also are usually anxious, who doesn't like to be touched by others, who has gravitational insecurity, that's the fear of height. All these are just some signs and behaviors which we may notice in sensory processing disorder. And what we have to remember is that not all children show all these behavior at the same time. Every child is different, and if the way they process the sensory signals is going to be different. And in order to help children with sensory processing difficulties, it is important to know about what sensory integration is. And this is a neurological process that organizes from one's own body and from the environment and makes it possible to use the body effectively with the environment. And this is known as sensory integration. This is an underlying foundation for social behavior and learning, and this is an unconscious process. So, for instance, imagine you watching this screen with the visual input, which is received through the visual sense. And you're able to hear to what I am saying through the auditory sense, maintaining a very good posture and joint position sense, which is through the vestibular and proprioceptive input. Now, all these sensory signals which you are receiving while watching my presentation are being integrated unconsciously. And this shows how well your sensory integration has happened. And this is an example of how a matured and integrated sensory system looks like. But for children with sensory processing difficulties, the issue is that they would not be able to process the information, as I mentioned earlier. So what we are going to see with regards to sensory diet is, before I go in detail about what sensory diet is, I would like to ask you all a question. You can type in your answers in the chat box. So what do you do to cope up with stress? Or what do you do when you feel like you're overloaded with a lot of things to do at the same time and you find it difficult to process and pay attention to what's happening? You can just type in your answers in the chat box. Most of you take a break, you do deep breathing, eat or drink, have some coffee, go for a walk alone, drawing, bite nails, yes. Sometimes singing alone, humming, yes. So these are all examples of the ways we regulate our nervous system. And we do it because we know what we need. You know what is going to calm you down, what is going to help you feel relaxed, or to help you feel alert, to help you perform better in your day-to-day life. So this is what a sensory diet is about for children who have difficulties not knowing what they have to do to get the sensory input they need to receive the appropriate senses when and where the child finds it challenging. And this is where our sensory diet comes into play. So what is a sensory diet? Let's see what a sensory diet is all about. The sensory diet, it is an individualized plan of physical activities, and it is a structured program for children with sensory processing difficulties. This sensory diet helps to regulate emotions and behaviors for optimal function and interaction. It is aimed to help a child obtain his or her just right state to perform at their most productive level. For children who tends to be overstimulated and aroused, a sensory diet will help calm them down so that they can be more focused and attentive. For children who are understimulated and under-aroused, a sensory diet is going to help them feel alert with the energy and ability to focus. Let's see what just right state looks like. When a child reaches the just right state, the child would be able to explore and focus on the task. The child will show meaningful interaction with the environment and the people, and there would be appropriate eye contact and spontaneous response to whatever task is being given to them. And the transition difficulties would be less. The child would be able to adapt to changes. The child will have improved attention and concentration in order to complete a task that's being given, and also the child will be able to follow given commands. Our sensory diet activities are usually implemented in this order. First, you alert the sensory system, then you organize the sensory system, and then you calm the sensory system. This is the order we follow while giving the sensory diet activities. In the alerting section, you give activities that fire up the nervous system with multisensory input. And this is going to help the child process in every sensory area. And while under the organizing section, you give activities that the child would need for the brain and body to work together by doing one or more activity at the same time. And in the calming section, you give the child inputs like gentle massage and giving vibrating toys in order the child would be able to organize and the child would be able to process that is being given in the alerting and organizing section. And this is how we normally plan out the sensory diet. So first you begin with the alerting activities, and then you give organizing, and then you calm the child down in order for the child to reach the just right state. Now, who designs a sensory diet? An occupational therapist designs the sensory diet, and it is an additional bonus if the occupational therapist is also a sensory integration certified therapist. And why an occupational therapist is because depending on the consultation you have, when you discuss about your concerns with the child, with the parent, and depending on the evaluation and observation done, the occupational therapist would help you guide in adjusting the sensory input to meet the children's need and also provide appropriate challenges according to the child's level to help them move forward into that just right state. Every child is different and unique, and everyone has various routine that they follow, right? So in order for the child to have an appropriate activity implemented in the sensory diet, it is essential to always have a consultation with the occupational therapist before you plan out the sensory diet. They would also help you guide in understanding your child's sensory need and also to recognize when a child is alert, when a child is under aroused. So in order to get all that understanding, an occupational therapist would definitely help you to understand all of that better. So once a sensory diet is planned and given, the parents and caregivers can then use it at home, and teachers and educational assistants can use it at the school. At the school, sensory diets have proven to be very helpful for children in order to get them engaged in school group activities and also in their academic skills. Now let's see some activities under each sensory input. There are various activities which can be implemented under each sense, and one particular activity would give you the sensory input of various senses. It doesn't mean that, like, if I have mentioned one particular activity under vestibular input, that activity could even calm one child while it would alert the other. So it is important to understand what exactly is our child's concern and what our child's need is and give activities accordingly. So under vestibular input, we have fast and slow rhythmical movements. We can give jumping activities, swinging in linear and rotatory motion, also dancing to music. If your child is under aroused, you give fast beat music in order to alert the sensory system. And if you want to calm your child down, you can give slow dancing movements with a very gentle and soft music. And you can give rolling activities on the gym ball, which gives a lot of vestibular input, and also jumping jacks. These are some examples of activities for the vestibular system. And for proprioceptive input, activities like animal walks, scooter board games, carrying a weighted backpack, compression garments, swimming. Swimming is a very good sport for children who seek a lot of proprioceptive input, and pushing and pulling games, wall push-ups, rock climbing, monkey bars, weighted blanket. These activities are usually for heavy work, and the children would get this proprioceptive input as they need. And under tactile input, you can give light touch, deep touch, messy play with different textures, like playing with a kinetic sand, rice bin, shaving foam, or using some seeds, pastas, and some soft textured jelly balls, All this is going to help the child when the child is going to be tactile seeking. And for activities with different temperature, you can give activities like, something with giving with cold temperature, which usually alerts the nervous system. Even when we touch something really cold unexpectedly, you feel alert, right? So activities with different temperature can also give good tactile input. An obstacle course on different textures, joint compression, giving fidget toys, vibrating toys, and therapeutic play-doh, all of this is going to help each children differently. Sometimes fidget toys have a calming effect on children, while for some children it alerts. So it is, as I again repeat, it is very important to know what our child needs and meet their concerns with the activities. And for auditory input, we give loud and soft music, playing with musical toys, changing voice modulation according to child's need, and also giving nature sounds, which is generally calming, and using noise cancellation headphones for children with auditory sensitivity. For visual input, you can give bright lights, contrast colors. All this help children who are under aroused so that it's more visually, it's going to give them a lot of input when they see bright colors or contrast colors. And visual timers and picture schedules, that's the visual schedules, which are generally helpful, especially in the classroom and also while following a home routine. So you always prepare a child showing the visual schedule, and the children usually feel prepared to what is next. And also limiting the visual clutter so that the child would be able to engage in what is given to them at that time, so that they have less distractions around. And you give dim lights when you want dim lights and repetitive motions like, the lava lamp, sensory lights, fish tank. All these are going to help calm the child down. And for oral input, you can give strong tastes that would be able to help children who are under aroused. Offer crunchy foods such as raw veggies, popcorn, pretzels, and apples. For children who like to chew, we can use chewy jewelry and chewy tubes. Drinking a thick smoothie through a straw also gives a lot of oral input. For children who likes to suck or lick things, you can try giving popsicles, preferably homemade. Maybe you can make a popsicle out of fruit so that the child is going to get the sensory input through sucking and licking needs. And involve the children in food preparations to increase their interest to try new foods. For children who avoid and show no much of interest to try or explore new foods, you can always include them through by helping you through food preparation in the kitchen, so that it's going to give them interest to try it. And also for olfactory input, you can give essential oils and calming scents like the vanilla, lavender, roses scents are generally calming in nature. Even most of us, when we buy these scented flavored candles, it's always, you feel like you feel calm in that environment, right? And for alerting, you can give citrus and peppermint scents and use fragrant ingredients while including your child in cooking so that they would be able to experience different aromas. And there are some kids who do not like scents at all. In such cases, it is always better we look for unscented products so that they don't feel distressed. And also avoid mixing orders so that it is not too much challenging or difficult for them to process what's being given. And this is just an example of a case study. And X is a 6-year-old happy boy, and he keeps moving around in the classroom. He is quite impulsive, and he finds it challenging to complete a given task. And he has difficulties in performing tabletop activities with good sitting tolerance. And he keeps bumping into things, and he has challenging in motor planning. For this kid, the activities for sensory diet would be like giving him swing movements, an obstacle course, which includes jumping, climbing, balancing, and crashing. You can give wall push-ups, animal walks, weighted blanket in order to give the proprioceptive input the child needs, and also joint compression, calming lights, and soft music to calm him down. We can also implement all these in one particular activity. Like for instance, while giving this obstacle course, you can play a calm, gentle music in the background, and also you can give the calming lights in the room so that the child gets all of this sensory input at the same time. It doesn't have to be like one thing after the other. You can include various sensory activities at the same time, and definitely an occupational therapist will help you guide, plan it accordingly. And we have to keep in mind that different activities will activate different sensory systems. So it is required to have a consultation with an occupational therapist, as I kept mentioning, to know about the child needs. And as every child, some goes to classroom. So for the classroom setting, then occupational therapist is going to guide you with activities which can be implemented in the classroom and for at home. But before you take a child outside, when you feel like you want to get your child to that just right state, you would be able to, with the help of an occupational therapist, plan it accordingly. And depending on the child's need, the time duration of implementing the sensory diet would also vary. And it is important to remember that sensory systems do not work in isolation, and they are all interlinked, and every child is different. If the child is already distressed or facing a meltdown, then we cannot implement sensory at that point, sensory diet at that point, because the child would be in a very distressful situation. And in such cases, instead of trying to implement activities or trying to get to do the child do an activity, you can just give him a calming space so that he or she doesn't hurt himself or herself, so that they feel calm with some gentle music in the background. You give some gentle squeezes so that the child feels really better, instead of trying to implement the sensory diet, and that's going to only make the child more distressed. So the environment while implementing sensory diet should be structured, and it should aim to support children in knowing what to attend and what is required for the task at hand. And it is necessary to follow the given sensory diet regularly to see the progress in the children's processing. Parents and teachers should also always keep giving the ongoing feedback, because as the child's ability to process the sensory information gets better, then the sensory diet plans also have to be changed. So it is important to remember all these things. And every time you have a consultation with the occupational therapist, you have to be very clear about what the signs and symptoms you see at home, what you feel your child is finding it challenging in every single area. And there are also some assessments which can be done in order to understand the child's sensory profile better. So I hope this presentation was helpful. You can ask your questions and we would be answering it.
Thank you very much, Risa, for the beautiful presentation. So anyone who has a question about the topic, you can raise your hand or unmute your microphone. And you can also write your question in our chat box.
Hi, Risa. Lucy here.
Hi, Lucy.
Yeah, so I have a question. So my
Yes.
son doesn't like to chew carrots, so cooked carrots.
Okay.
He will just swallow. So if it's, mixed in a stew, then he'll just, if there's a carrot, he's just going to swallow it. So how do I address that? He eats it, but doesn't chew it.
Is this only with the carrot, or do you find this with other vegetables?
So I would say apples. Apples is, he will chew, but his face will just be, cringing.
Yes.
So he doesn't eat, I would say, raw vegetables. So like cucumbers, that's a no-no. But carrots, since I put them in a stew, he will just swallow. He won't chew.
He wouldn't chew.
Yeah.
Have you tried giving it
Yeah, maybe I need to try that. Maybe try a soup, a carrot soup.
Yes, carrot soup or a carrot smoothie. You can try that and see if he's accepting it.
Okay, great. Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Hi Risa, Suma here. Yeah.
Hi, Suma.
Thanks for your wonderful session. I do have a question.
Yes.
Actually, I was working with a client in a school setup. I'm an RBT. So my doubt here is do we need to follow the sensory diet exactly, the alertness, organizing, calming? Because my client is having right now two kinds of every 2 sessions in a week OT classes. But right
Okay.
now, my question is like, so do we need to follow every time the alertness, the organizing, the calming? So is like in the
Yes.
school setup, it is very difficult to follow all the three. So is like
Yes.
which part makes her more calming? Like, can we follow only calming?
No. See, the sensory diet is always implemented in this order: alerting, organizing, and calming. It's because we have many sensory systems, right? So in case the child has only one particular sense being alert, like for instance, the child seeks a lot of movement, and this shows that the child has high vestibular seeking, right? So in
Yeah.
this case, there are other sensory systems which are not alert. So we give activities in order to help the child develop alertness in all the sensory areas at the same time.
Okay.
Okay, and once you give this, and after this we proceed with the organizing activity, and that activity is going to make the child work with the brain and body in order to get that adaptive response. And the activities which are being given in the alerting and organizing section needs to be processed. The child needs some space to register and process what was being given. So for that, we give calming activities, like you get the child in a relaxed state, you give joint compression, you give maybe vibrating massages, or you give gentle squeezes so that the child gets some time to observe what's being given in the first two sections. And sensory
Yeah.
diet doesn't always have to be in for longer duration. Maximum, you can use it like a sensory break. In the classroom setting, a sensory diet can be used like a sensory break.
That's
You
true,
pull out the
because
child. Yeah.
sorry to
You put
interrupt,
it in
because
silence.
as we mentioned, like every 20 minutes we are giving the sensory break for the child. So during that sensory break we are providing this calming, like which you said, like this one, I used to give the compression for her, which makes her settle down. So for before the class just is going to start, we will give this compression so that she is able to sit for 30 minutes without any distraction.
Okay.
That's what so far we are doing. So because
Yeah,
right now just it started OT therapies, maybe this will work for her, I think so far.
Yes. So before starting the class also, you can take the child out and you can give some activities which would cover up all these areas just for 10 minutes. And definitely you would see the child get into that just right state you want.
Yeah. Thank you, Risa. It's cleared.
Thank you, Reese.
This is Amina.
Hi, Amina.
So Risa had a question. So my daughter has a lot of sensory issues, and I've had her assessed by two different OTs. And so previously she was able to roll, she was able to sit on the swing, and she was also doing the wheelbarrow with her occupational therapist. But in a very short period of time, she's developed an aversion towards it. It almost seems like as if she's frightened to do these activities. We have swings at home as well, and she can do climbing. She climbs up on the rope, she goes on the slide. We have a swivel chair which she loves, and she spins herself on it, and she'll ask me to spin her on it as well. But she's developed an aversion towards swings and wheelbarrow and rolling on a mat. So I'm trying to figure out what has happened and what we can do, because both the occupational therapists have recommended these activities for her.
Is she showing aversion only to these three activities you're mentioning?
Yes.
Okay. Was there a gap when, from the therapy session, was there a gap that she had to miss? No.
No,
just
it's
like
one fine day, she refused to sit on the swing. And that's what happened with the rest of the activities as well. The swings she was sitting on independently. She didn't need any assistance, nothing. And by swing, I mean just, the benches.
The platforms, the normal.
So she didn't have back support or anything. So by the when she was 3 years old, that's when she started sitting on the swing independently. And now she's just turned 5. So just recently, she's just developed an aversion, which we don't understand. There's been no accident or anything.
Okay. We have to see if it is some sort of behavior, or is it because of some sensory processing difficulty? Because you're saying that she's able to climb and jump and do everything, right?
Yeah.
So we have to first observe and see if this is something with regards to what, like a behavior she's doing, or if it's some sort of sensory difficulties she has.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we also have some questions in the chat box. If I may read from Sama. What about food in general? Children with SPD should avoid sugar.
Sorry, once more.
So what about
What-
food in general? Children with SPD should avoid sugar. That's the question. That's one of the
Yes,
questions.
yes, it is definitely good to avoid sugar, as you know, because of the sugar, the children gets really hyper, and for not all the children, it always differs. So it is best to avoid sugary foods, so that the child stays more alert and more calm, so that they don't get more impulsive.
Okay, thank you. Then we have some more. Maybe we can still entertain at least two questions.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hello,
Yes.
hi. Sorry if I
Yeah.
can jump in. This is Samah again. Thanks
Yes,
for your
yes.
answer. But I also wanted to ask about, other food or other supplements that could help with SPD, Are there like vitamins, or does it get worse with the lack of vitamin D or any other, main vitamins? Or it's not related to nutrition and food in general?
It does play a very important role in the sensory processing the disorder. The child has to have the vitamins and everything, and also probiotic also helps. So you can use supplements.
Okay, but you don't.
Nutrition is very important. Yeah.
But you don't see like the main therapy would be with the occupational therapy, not, I mean, with food. This is not like an important element of the healing, no, or dealing with SPD.
The deficiencies could also lead to oral seeking issues. So it is important that all these supplements and everything is also being taken, and all their levels are appropriate, so that they don't face other sensory processing difficulties. So nutrition and supplements definitely helps for children with sensory processing disorder. And also for the gut, for the interoception sense, which I was talking about, the
Yes.
supplements help.
Okay, so how many occupational therapy sessions, I mean, does the child need to take before you see a clear, I mean, improvement in his behavior?
That varies from child to child, because as I mentioned earlier, every child's level is different, their needs are different. So we have to first observe the child, and seeing how much they need, we recommend sessions accordingly. We go through the sensory profile, we have a detailed consultation with you. And
Okay.
without seeing the child, it's
Difficult to say.
So yes, it's difficult to say how much the child might need. There are kids who require sessions like 3 to 4 sessions a week. There are kids who are just good with 1 session a week. So it differs.
Yeah, I mean, does SPD grow with them, or they grow out of it after a certain age, or after they,
As they grow up, by giving these activities, we help the child to learn self-regulation. So as how we unconsciously, do things like you drink coffee to alert you up, you go for a walk when you feel stressed. These are ways we regulate ourselves, right? So children, they do not know. So these activities which we implement in the sensory diet or during the therapy session is going to help them learn what is going to benefit their needs. And as they grow up, they would learn about the self-regulation.
Okay, but I mean, you're saying it never goes. I mean, these senses will always need this kind of stimulation to be regulated.
They would learn to cope up.
Okay.
They would learn to cope up with the activities. Like some kids, like they're really good with knitting. So as they grow, they have this as an activity to calm themselves down. So what you give the activities is basically to help them learn what to use when they want.
Yeah.
And also for the sensitive process to get better, it is going to get better. The strategies are going to help them also learn with the self-regulation. So as they grow up, when you see kids who are over 10 years or 11 years, they will show you what they want. The moment they come into the session, they will know that this is what they need for them to calm themselves down. So they point out to what they want. So that's how they learn about what is going to be helpful for their needs.
All right, great. Thank you so much.
Hello. Hi.
Hi.
My name is Michael. How are
Yes.
you?
Hi, Michael. I'm good. Thank
Yeah,
you. How are you?
I'm very good too. Thank you for this beautiful seminar. It really helps me. Actually, my concern is about my son in a particular situation. Like, for example, even though we already regulated his behavior for some instances, but when it comes to a big group, if everybody like talking to him or he met a lot of people he is not meeting for a long time, he has a behavior of a lot of fidgeting. He's like overstimulated. How we gonna address that or help him to regulate his emotion?
Can you please once more repeat? Sorry, I did not
Hi, yeah,
get.
yeah, okay. My big concern is about my son who is on the spectrum,
Okay.
autism, and when it comes to like a big crowd or people, he knows he has a lot of hyperactivity. Like if it's somebody or anybody gonna talk to him, he cannot control himself. He do a lot of fidgeting or overstimulated or
Yes.
overexcited. So how can we gonna help him for such situation?
As you know, one major symptom of children having autism is they do not like they don't engage with social skills, right? So that
Mhm.
situation, being in an overcrowded place, could stimulate him, and he would be doing this fidgeting in order to calm himself down.
Mhm.
It would not be like a behavior, but because he's not okay with the environment, because he's not able to process the crowd and the sounds around him, he does this fidgeting in order to help himself, like calm himself down.
Yeah, but the thing is, it only happens when we meet people we know already. But for the strange people, he
Doesn't.
doesn't. Yeah, he doesn't. Only for the people we know already.
Okay. So maybe this also could be a behavior then where he's maybe not liking it and he's trying to show this. So again, like we have to see if it's a behavior or sensory.
So how
But if
can we
it's
gonna
going to,
help him?
like you can give him some fidget toys instead of letting him fidget. You give some vibrating small toys in his hand or some squeezing ball in the hand. Something which would compensate his need, which would compensate his fidgeting need. You can give him fidget toys would definitely help. Also, you can give noise canceling earphones when you take outside.
Okay, then. Thank you,
Yeah,
Risa.
yes, you're
Right.
welcome.
Appreciate it much.
Right. Thank you very much. And I think it's almost time for those who still have their question. You can send your questions via email. I'll be sending our contact details as well. And once again, thank you very much, Riza, for your time and for this beautiful presentation.